Ethan Brooks watched the December sky darken with dread. After 30 years raising sheep, his instincts screamed danger. While neighbors dismissed his warnings, he dug an underground tunnel through frozen earth. Passing trucks slowed to watch, drivers shaking their heads. By nightfall, he sealed his sheep inside as the blizzard struck. When morning came and Ethan checked his tunnel, he froze. The snow arrived that morning without much fanfare. In the small farming community where Ethan Brooks had spent his entire life, December snowstorms were nothing unusual, but Ethan felt something different. He stood in his yard studying the clouds. They hung heavy and low. The air felt wrong. He pulled up the weather forecast on his computer. The meteorologist predicted a typical winter storm. But when Ethan looked at the satellite images and compared them to decades of experience, his gut twisted with certainty. This was going to be bad. In the barn, his sheep seemed to agree. They huddled together in tight clusters, their behavior agitated and anxious. Ethan trusted their judgment. He made a decision. He had to warn his neighbors. Climbing into his truck, Ethan drove to the first farm down the road. Ethan explained his concerns. The neighbor listened politely, then smiled. It was just a seasonal storm. Undeterred, Ethan visited the next farm, and the next. Each time, his warnings were met with the same response: dismissive laughter, bemused smiles, polite nods followed by clear disinterest. By the time Ethan returned home, frustration burned in his chest. He was alone in his concern, but that didn't mean he would do nothing. Ethan walked to his tool shed and grabbed his shovel and pickaxe. Behind his barn, he chose a spot where the ground sloped slightly downward. He began to dig. The frozen earth resisted every strike. Blisters formed on his palms within the first hour, but Ethan kept working. Throughout the afternoon, trucks passed on the nearby road. Some slowed down. Drivers stared at the strange sight of Ethan Brooks, digging frantically into the frozen ground. A few shook their heads before driving on. Not a single person stopped to ask if he needed help. As the sky darkened, Ethan reached what would become the main chamber. He hollowed out a space large enough to hold his entire herd. The tunnel was finished. He went to the barn and began herding his sheep toward the tunnel entrance. When the last sheep disappeared into the tunnel, Ethan grabbed the wooden boards and nails. He sealed the entrance, then packed snow around it for extra insulation. Inside his house, Ethan made dinner and waited. The first real gusts of wind hit around 7 in the evening. By 8, the storm had arrived in full force. Wind howled against the walls. Snow fell so thick that Ethan couldn't see past his front window. The temperature dropped rapidly. Ethan sat by the fire, listening to the fury outside. But beneath his anxiety, he felt grateful. His sheep were safe below ground, protected from the deadly cold. When dawn finally came, the howling stopped. Ethan went to the window and looked outside. Snow covered everything in massive drifts. He trudged through the deep snow toward where he had sealed the tunnel entrance. Each step required effort. The snow came up past his knees in places. As he approached the location, something made him stop. Multiple sets, human footprints, and hoof prints. Someone had been here during the storm. Panic seized Ethan. Someone must have broken in, discovered his sheep, stolen them in the chaos of the storm. His hands trembled as he began clearing away the snow. The boards came free. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and descended into the tunnel. Each step downward increased his fury. He had worked so hard, suffered so much mockery, and now someone had violated his shelter. He reached the chamber and raised his flashlight. The beam swept across the space. All of his sheep were there, every single one, safe and healthy. But the chamber was packed with other animals. More sheep he didn't recognize, goats, even a few cattle. And standing among the animals, looking exhausted but relieved, were his neighbors. All of them. The same farmers who had laughed at his warnings. The same people who had dismissed his concerns. Ethan stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. The neighbor who had laughed the loudest stepped forward. He looked embarrassed, ashamed. He explained what had happened. As the storm had intensified beyond anything anyone had predicted, their barns had proven inadequate. With their animals in danger, they had remembered Ethan's tunnel. Through the blinding snow, fighting against wind that threatened to knock them down, they had brought their livestock here, to the only shelter they knew would be strong enough. They had carefully opened the entrance during the night, guided their terrified animals inside, resealed everything. They had planned to return at first light to thank Ethan and explain, but he had found them first. Then something changed in his chest. The anger drained away. A smile began to form on his face. One by one, the neighbors began to smile back. Relief flooded their faces. Someone started to laugh, then another. Soon the chamber echoed with the sound of grateful, exhausted laughter. Ethan helped them organize. Together they began the process of bringing the animals back to the surface. Neighbors helped neighbors guide livestock through the tunnel and into the bright morning sun. As they worked, something warm spread through Ethan's chest. It wasn't just satisfaction or vindication. It was something deeper: connection, community, the knowledge that his actions had mattered. By afternoon, every animal had been returned to its owner. The tunnel stood empty again, except for Ethan's own sheep. His neighbors thanked him one by one before heading home to begin repairs. Ethan stood in his yard watching them leave. The storm had passed. The sun shone bright on the white landscape. Sometimes taking a stand to do what you believe is right creates something unexpected. It builds a shelter that catches everyone when they fall. It proves that one person's determination can save an entire community. And you, if you had been in Ethan's position, would you have kept digging even when everyone doubted you?